Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more videos like this one.
The Vietnam War was marked by intense battles and moments of great suffering. Among these moments, the Battle of Hue, one of the longest and bloodiest of the conflict. This emblematic photograph from that period shows an American paramedic carrying a wounded child, a scene that captures the devastating impact of the war on the most innocent. The child, found alone, wandering between the lines of fire from both sides, became a poignant symbol of lost innocence amidst the chaos of war. This photograph, taken in the Red River Delta, a crucial region for the control of northern Vietnam, captures a disturbing scene during the Vietnam War. It shows three youths, no more than children, with grenades strapped to their belts, prepared to face the Viet Minh army. The image is a shocking portrait of the brutal reality of the conflict, highlighting how the war profoundly tragically affected innocent lives. Seeing such young children armed and ready for combat underlines the desperate situation of the country, where even the youngest were dragged into the chaos of war. This photograph serves as a painful reminder of the terrible consequences of the conflict. October 1966. Gunnery Sergeant Jeremiah Purdy, visibly wounded, with his head bandaged and bleeding, being carefully helped by fellow Marines down a muddy hill. This moment illustrates the harsh reality faced by soldiers on the battlefield, highlighting the brotherhood and sacrifice among the military. Purdy's expression is a mix of pain and resilience, capturing the essence of sacrifice and shared struggle among soldiers. In the center of the photograph, an empty helmet rests on the ground, bathed in a soft light that seems to give it an almost sacred air. This helmet, left as if it was something commonplace yet deeply personal, evokes questions. Who wore it? Do they still live? The image of the helmet, isolated and striking, becomes the focus of a scene that conveys both loss and abandonment. In the background, almost like a secondary scene yet deeply connected, a wounded soldier is supported by his comrades. While the first medical evacuation helicopter hovered above us, I saw the first sergeant with his arms up. I saw the doctor carrying the wounded, and then I saw the boy lying on his back in the grass. I need to capture all this in a photo, I thought. My heart was pounding. Imagine looking up at the sky and seeing not birds, but planes. And from them, not rain, but bombs. In this 1965 photo, we see a significant moment in the Vietnam War. A giant airplane, called a B-52, flew high over Vietnam. It was part of what the United States called Strategic Air Command. Its mission was to drop huge bombs, each weighing as much as a small car, on the coast of Vietnam. These bombings, known for their intensity and destruction, were strategic to the US war efforts, aiming to destabilize enemy positions and infrastructure. However, the reality of these airstrikes was brutal, affecting both military and civilians, altering landscapes and fates. Rolling Thunder was a prolonged bombing campaign conducted by the US Air Force during the Vietnam War. This intense series of airstrikes aimed to destabilize the military capabilities and morale of North Vietnam. In this photograph captured during that operation, an American soldier is seen in a moment of deep vulnerability. As he leaves a runway, he covers his face with his hands, a deeply human gesture that suggests an effort to hide or perhaps to shield himself from the brutal realities surrounding him. Imagine a muddy and relentless terrain where each step is a monumental challenge. In this setting, American soldiers are captured on a mission not of combat, but of rescue. The photograph shows a group of these soldiers, determined as they carefully carry a wounded colleague through a swamp. The scene is tense. They need to move cautiously, aware that any mistake could worsen the injured's condition. Amidst the chaos of war, these moments of humanity and determination highlight the depth of the bonds formed under extreme circumstances. Statistics show that the average soldier in Vietnam was a 19-year-old man from a working-class family, who often did not have the opportunity to attend college. This profile not only reveals who fought in the war, but also highlights the social and economic disparities that influenced who went to the battlefield. This trend points to a broader aspect of military recruitment policies and soldier selection, where economically less privileged youth were the most susceptible to enlistment or compulsory recruitment. Historic photo taken in 1965, it captures a raw truth about the war. The image shows an American soldier from the 173rd Airborne Brigade during his mission in Vietnam. What makes this photo particularly striking is not just the soldier's uniform or gear, but the handwritten words on his helmet, "War is hell." This photograph not only documents the physical aspect of the war, but also captures the emotional and psychological burden borne by the soldiers. Women and children are crouched down, trying to protect themselves from the deafening noise of gunfire. They are in Bao Tri, not far from Saigon, seeking refuge from the imminent danger. As crossfire filled the air, a group of paratroopers from the 173rd Airborne Brigade appeared. These soldiers, visible in the background, had a critical mission: to escort these civilians, ensuring their safety amidst the chaos of gunfire and explosions. The presence of these paratroopers offers a glimmer of hope, a possibility to escape the violence surrounding them. The photograph captures not just the physical conflict, but also the emotional and psychological impact on the civilians involved. Napalm is an incendiary substance used in bombs that, when exploded, releases a large fireball, causing devastating fires and extensive damage. Although it was first used in World War II, napalm became notoriously known during the Vietnam War. The substance was frequently used to clear dense forests and dislodge opponents from fortified positions. This photograph taken during the Vietnam War shows one of these napalm attacks. The image captures a massive fireball erupting near an area where American soldiers were patrolling in South Vietnam. The visual effect is both impressive and terrifying, underscoring the destructive power of this weapon. A family, laden with emotion and anxiety, awaits one of the happiest and most longed-for moments of their lives. They are there to receive Lieutenant Colonel Robert L. Sturm, a prisoner of war who is finally returning home after many years of absence due to the Vietnam War. The scene is deeply moving and symbolic, marking the end of a painful wait and the beginning of a new phase in the Sturm family's life. The reunion, filled with tears and tight hugs, not only celebrates the return of a hero, but also underscores the immeasurable relief and joy of having a loved one back home. This moment is a vivid testimony to the human cost of war. At Tan Son Nhut Air Base, soldiers form a line, each carrying the weight of loss and respect for the friends who have departed. Beside them, carefully aligned coffins serve as a silent and powerful reminder of the devastating costs of war. In the sky above, a military plane waits patiently, ready to take the fallen back home for the last time. This moment is marked by a mixture of solemnity and sadness. It reflects the respect and honor that the military dedicate to their fallen colleagues, ensuring that even in death, they are not left behind. The transport of the coffins on the military plane is not just a logistical procedure, it is a final act of care and respect, a tribute to the lives of these soldiers and the sacrifice they made. In 1975, as the Vietnam War came to an end, a group of orphaned children was prepared for a very long and important journey. These children, who had lost their families due to the prolonged and devastating conflict, were prepared for a very long and significant journey. They were being transported by plane from Vietnam to the United States in a rescue and hope operation known as Operation Baby Lift. This movement aimed to provide a new beginning for these children, offering them the chance to be welcomed and loved by American adoptive families. The journey symbolized not just the transition to a new home, but also to a new life, away from the scars and traumas of war. Historic photograph that captures a moment of unique and touching humanity amidst the chaos of the Vietnam War. It shows an American soldier, originally from Portsmouth, in a simple but profoundly powerful gesture. He is carrying an elderly Vietnamese woman in his arms. The details of how their paths crossed may be unknown, but the image speaks volumes about the act of compassion that transcends the barriers of war. This photograph not only documents an event, but also serves as a powerful reminder that, even in the worst situations, there is a room for acts of humanity. The photograph in question shows an American soldier, far from his homeland, finding unexpected comfort in cradling a dog in his arms. This encounter occurred while he was surrounded by enemy forces in one of the most intense confrontations of the conflict. The soldier, perhaps reminiscing about home or seeking a momentary relief from the stress and violence surrounding him, finds in the dog a sympathetic and welcoming companion. At the end of the Vietnam War, specifically in the moments leading up to the fall of Saigon in April 1975, the image captures a symbolic episode of that period. Combat boots abandoned on the road by soldiers of the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, who were trying to flee the advancing North Vietnamese forces and blend in with civilians to avoid being identified as military personnel. Award-winning photos showing a Vietnamese mother and her children in the midst of a desperate escape, crossing the turbulent waters of a river. The context of this dramatic scene is the city of Quy Nhon, targeted by intense bombings carried out by US planes. In the photograph, the determination and despair of the mother as she guides her children through the river show a struggle for survival against the adversities brought by the war. The act of crossing the river, a natural barrier that here becomes a symbol of transition and danger, reflects not just the attempt to escape the immediate dangers of the bombing, but also the hope of finding safety and refuge on the other side. Somewhere in the jungle battlefields of South Vietnam, this American soldier found a message written on a tombstone. It was addressed to African American soldiers and read, "African American soldiers of the United States, you are committing the same heinous crimes in South Vietnam as the Ku Klux Klan commits against your family back home." A female guerrilla from communist Vietnam escorting an American soldier along a rural road. The American aviator was shot down and captured by Vietnamese communist fighters in 1967. The American soldier was captured after his plane was shot down and remained in captivity until his release in 1973. This image was extensively used by the Vietnamese communists for propaganda purposes, hence the use of a very small woman as a guard to make the captured aviator appear less heroic, aiming to influence public perception about the power and morality of the fighters involved. Vietnamese women in South Vietnam carry pots and other belongings as they leave their homes for safety reasons. The American government supported the South in the fight against the communist North, aiming to prevent the spread of communism in Southeast Asia. American troops were sent in large numbers, intensifying the conflict and the consequences for the local civilian population. American soldiers from the 9th Infantry Division fire at enemy troops somewhere along the border between Vietnam and Cambodia in 1970. This area, due to its strategic location, became a critical point of conflict during the Vietnam War. The American troops, committed to combating enemy forces, frequently faced ambushes and attacks in a hostile and densely forested environment. This action is part of the ongoing US efforts to contain the spread of communism in the region. March 21, 1967. American Marines from the 173rd Airborne Brigade attack Viet Cong positions, armed with machine guns. They advanced under adverse conditions to engage the enemy. This action took place during a critical period of the war, characterized by aggressive operations and counterinsurgency tactics. The operations of the 173rd Brigade were notable for their airborne nature and mobility, allowing for rapid responses and effective attacks against communist forces, demonstrating the intensity and brutality of the conflict in Vietnamese territory. South Vietnamese soldiers fighting in the city of Saigon in South Vietnam. This period was marked by significant confrontations, especially during the Tet Offensive, when Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces launched coordinated attacks on several South Vietnamese cities, including Saigon. The South Vietnamese soldiers, supported by the United States, bravely fought to defend the capital from surprise attacks and intense urban combat. January 1968. a US captain and his company interrogate 3 elderly villagers on the north-central coast of Vietnam in 1967. This interaction is part of counterinsurgency operations, where American soldiers often sought information on Viet Cong activities in local villages. Such practices were common and highlight the challenges faced by American troops in distinguishing friends from enemies in an asymmetric warfare and guerrilla environment. Soldiers from the 3rd Battalion of the 9th Infantry Division of the US Army, some carrying their M16 rifles as they board helicopters during a routine operation. South Vietnam on January 23, 1970. The use of helicopters allowed troops to reach remote areas and execute tactical missions efficiently, representing a fundamental strategy in conducting the conflict and in the effort to control regions and combat guerrilla forces. In 1964, after an intense military operation to dominate a village controlled by the Viet Cong, South Vietnamese troops and American soldiers faced a scene of chaos and destruction. A photograph of this moment captures the urgency and danger involved in removing girls from a burning village. The image shows the military acting quickly, carrying and guiding these young women out of danger, while the structures around them are consumed by fire. In this photo, we see the details of a painful incident that occurred during a confrontation. The image shows a wounded Marine, Blaine, who was tragically hit in the middle of the chest. The injury occurred while he was bent forward, a posture that unfortunately did not protect him from the trajectory of the bullet. The photo not only captures the severity of Blaine's situation, but also underlines the chaos and brutality of combat, reflecting the constant danger faced by Marines in the field. Sunlight breaks through the dense foliage around the town of Binh Gia as South Vietnamese troops, along with their American advisors, are photographed while resting, still alert after spending the night in an ambush position, waiting for a Viet Cong attack that never came in January 1965. The scene is emblematic of guerrilla warfare, where ambushes and surprise attacks are common, and the enemy is often invisible until the moment of confrontation. The photo also illustrates the collaboration between Vietnamese and American forces. Dr. Thomas Cole looks up with his one uncovered eye while treating Sergeant Harrison Pell, who was wounded during a shootout on January 30th, 1966. The men belonged to the 1st Cavalry Division, which was engaged in a battle at An Thi in the Central Highlands against combined Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces. This photograph appeared on the cover of Life magazine on February 11th, 1966. In July 1970, in a scene captured at Firebase Catherine, located on a hill south of the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, in Vietnam, soldiers from the 3rd Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division find a moment of relief amidst the war setting. The photograph shows them starting a rock session, surrounded by the typical symbols of the conflict: wooden bunkers, a helicopter, and sandbags. Music in this context is not just entertainment, but a psychological necessity and a link to a world far from war. The complete setting with the elements of war in the background underscores the reality these young men face daily, showcasing the duality of their existence: fighters in a brutal conflict, yet still young people seeking moments of humanity and normality. In this photo, we see the jungle area of Ben Cat, where American paratroopers from the 2nd Battalion of the 173rd Airborne Brigade face the challenges of terrain and weather. The photograph captures these soldiers as they cross a river under heavy rain, carefully holding their automatic weapons above the water to prevent damage and ensure combat readiness. These paratroopers were on an extensive operation searching for Viet Cong positions, already lasting 12 days without any direct contact with the enemy. Near the border with Cambodia, 18 miles north of Tay Ninh, an intense military operation unfolds, involving South Vietnamese forces and the aerial support of the US Army. American helicopters are seen hovering above the tree line, firing machine guns at enemy positions to provide cover as South Vietnamese ground troops advance on a Viet Cong camp. The image of this operation captures the intensity of the conflict in Vietnam. where the combination of ground and aerial tactics was often necessary to confront an enemy that used the dense vegetation for its tactical advantage. Striking photo that captures the determination and challenges faced by American soldiers in the Vietnam War. A machine gunner from the 9th Infantry Division of the US, notable for his height of 6 feet 5 inches, is seen crossing a muddy stream in the Mekong Delta, south of Saigon. The photograph shows the soldier almost submerged, with only his rifle emerging above the muddy water, highlighting the difficulty of the crossing. This moment vividly illustrates the physical and environmental challenges faced by troops in Vietnam, particularly in the Mekong Delta, an area known for its flooded terrain and dense vegetation. The ability to keep equipment, especially weapons, dry and functional in these conditions is crucial for survival and combat effectiveness.